Jeb Bush, who's getting Dave Kochel to move to Miami probably in March to start being in position to run the campaign. Tell us about Jeb, his biggest strength right now, his biggest weakness, and something about his prospects that is being overlooked in terms of its importance to telling the tale of how he'll do.
Well, the best thing that Jeb has going for him right now is the family infrastructure and his base in Florida. I mean, this guy has the infrastructure already in place to do 60 fundraisers in the last 70 days. He plays very well in private meetings in the boardroom. He's an intellectual heavyweight. He wows the crowds, or wows the boardroom. But the problem is going to be when he gets in front of crowds and starts to have to answer questions on his immigration position and his Common Core position. Common Core just taken on a life of its own in the Tea Party. The one thing that's been overlooked is Jeb's interactions with the press and eventually possibly with Democrats. He's prickly. He's not as warm and cuddly maybe as his brother was on the campaign trail. And that's being overlooked right now.
Dave, this prickly thing, I hear it all the time. I've seen it myself on occasion. But can he just cut that out? There are times when he's not prickly. He likes people. He's doing this with purpose. Can he just cut out the prickly? Or is it not, doesn't have it in him?
Well, that's what we'll see, right? I mean, when he put out his immigration book a year or so ago, the Washington press gave him a pass, saying he was rusty. I don't think he was rusty. I think this is who he is. And Jeb's he's a veteran. Can he change that? I don't know.
We'll call him the Tin Man. He's rusty. All right, let's move on to Dave.
Moving on. There's Dave Weigel. I like this. This is like Hollywood Squares here, only it's like a Hollywood triangle. Dave Weigel up at the top. We're going to talk about Rand Paul now. So strength, weakness, and kind of overlooked quality or issue.
Well, Rand's strength is, I think, self-confidence and staff. He has hired very smartly. He's moved away from the base his father built and the organization his father built and sort of taken from Bruce Rauner's successful campaign in Illinois for governor. He took his campaign manager, Mike Biondo, who ended up not being terribly helpful to Rick Santorum in New Hampshire, but knows New Hampshire. When I was with Paul a couple of weeks ago, he knew exactly where he was going, knew exactly who to meet. I think a weakness would be twinned with that. I mean, he has a certain overconfidence and thinks he can take point on every issue. He knows where he's going right now. I mean, his first month in the Senate in the majority is going to be spent introducing a lot of bills that he's worked through the last time. But when an issue pops up, when, for example, Edward Snowden popped up, and this might come up again in 2015, his instinct was to say that he was more of an outlaw icon, that he was not a criminal. Everyone else is saying he committed treason, Rand didn't. There's an instant like that could happen. And overlooked, I think, people write about the base out there in the Ron Paul movement, but the scope of this thing is insane. Every place he goes, every state, there is a campaign for liberty that Ron Paul built. Every town, if he is ready to run New Hampshire, I've been told they just have somebody ready to run the campaign in every town of any size there, which is not something even a candidate like Mitt Romney can count on now. No one is leaving the Rand Paul universe anymore. We're compared to the way they are for Romney.
Yeah, Dave, I agree with you that the Ron Paul connection is overlooked. In terms of what you seem to be saying, it's overlooked in terms of a strength. I think it's also overlooked potentially as a weakness, and I'm curious what you think about that. I mean, we're just starting to really see people drill down into how much distance is there really between the father's views and the son's views. I think that could be a huge potential set of landmines for Rand Paul as he moves forward. Do you think that a problem?
Yeah, when he gets into the heat of the campaign, that's sort of what I was saying about him freelancing. If there is an incident in a debate, in a scrum, the kind of thing that he doesn't have to deal with now when his press is pretty good, might have to deal with when he gets in the heat of the campaign, where his father's views on something are thrown back at him. Look, if he was if what had just happened with ISIS happened 6 months from now, in the heat of the campaign, his father was kind of blaming the United States for blowback, and Rand was answering. In the past, he's gotten very annoyed at that kind of question, and ask Howard Dean, ask Rick Santorum. That does not look great on camera. That ends up alienating people.
All right, Dave, I got to tell you, I think one of the biggest 6 moments of this whole thing is going to be when Rand Paul's oppo jumped on his head. We see how he handles it. But Lisa, I want to move to you and talk about Romney. You were in, according to my notes, MISSISSIPPI yesterday with Mitt Romney. Talk us through generally, based on last night and everything you've reported out, strength, weakness, overlooked factor.
Well, his strength is that he's by far the most experienced guy running in this whole field, or woman, I should say, including Hillary Clinton running in this whole field. He's done this before. He has networks in all the states. He's debated dozens of times. But, of course, that's also a major weakness. This is his third time running. This is a invention that he's trying to do here, not only from loser to winner, but from this image of him as this out-of-touch plutocrat, right, to this sort of touchy-feely guy who cares about the middle class and cares about the poor. And it's just not clear at all whether voters are going to buy that. He's really asking a lot of voters to sort of come along with yet another transformation for him of his image. Now, in terms of the most underrated thing, I think the thing to watch with Romney is going to be Latinos. He's indicated to allies that he would run to the right of Bush on immigration issues. He won 27% of the Latino vote last time. That was not good. It was pretty rough. And, you know, much lower than that, it's really hard to see how you win a general election. And I think a lot of people in his party have a lot of concerns about that.
All right, Lisa, we got to move on because we got 3 more candidates to get to. So let's go to Mr. Bender and Marco Rubio.
Biggest advantages for Marco Rubio right now is he's the best communicator in the field, whether it's 5 candidates, 10 candidates, the 130 candidates the Republican Party has on its website. And he's also an underdog right now. Rubio's best at having to come from behind. The negative in him is just almost the same as Bush. Rubio is one of the authors of the immigration bill that's anathema to the conservative base of the party, and overlooked his experience. In 2012, on the campaign trail during the presidential election, he criticized Obama as not being ready for the White House. It's hard to see how Rubio himself clears that bar. His biggest accomplishments are political, becoming Speaker of the House in Florida and an underdog win as in the U.S. Senate. He doesn't have major legislative
Mr. Bender, all I got to say is you nailed that list.
Well, except for the communicator thing, where I'd say there's a man from Arkansas named Huckabee who might dispute the characterization of the senator as the most effective communicator in the party. Dave Weigel, let's go to your second candidate, Scott Walker. Give us the three items on the list.
I think his biggest advantage is he is the best story for the early state voters of anyone in the race. Iowans especially. A lot of Iowans know the story of him fighting the Democrats and the unions to pass bills. The way he tells that to some audiences, it sounds like the story of St. Sebastian getting hit by arrows. It's a great story. His negative, I'd say, he will be in a race against people who can more credibly be seen in the commander-in-chief role. That's something candidates, governors can get past in a lot of cases. I just think he has an unusual number of people who have foreign policy credibility when he doesn't, in a race where right now foreign policy is bigger than many people thought it was going to be. And overlooked, I think, he just, unlike Chris Christie, I think, who has stumbled with some of the high-dollar donors who begged him to run, Walker is still a huge choice of the sort of people we saw last weekend rallying around the Kochs, pooling their money. He is beloved by that donor class.
Lisa, it's like your name is Wyback. You're last on the list, so you got less time. Tell us quickly, Hillary Clinton, strength, weakness, and the overlooked factor.
Hillary Clinton's strength, she'll probably avoid a bruising, expensive primary. She'll head into the general in a strong position. Weakness, the Clinton name. There's a certain segment of the population that will never vote for her because she's a Clinton. When we in the press remind people of all the baggage that comes with the Clinton name, does that segment grow? Overlooked, staffing. The Clintons are notorious for having a dysfunctional operation. The choices she is making now in terms of who she's hiring, how they work together, how they control all that outside advice will have a huge bearing on whether she runs an effective campaign.